What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Bull Season 6, Episode 21, Silent Killer. So I gotta give credit that I actually did not predict this ending to this episode. I'm glad that it's going to end up being a two-parter. It's not just one random episode before we get to the finale that's going to be another random episode. I'm glad for that, at least. But I gotta admit, my mind was somewhere completely different. I thought I had it all figured out. I'm like, this writing's so predictable. I know what's going to happen. Because there was the one guy they kept focusing on that lost his wife and all of that. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, they focused on this guy twice now. And they haven't really cut back to him. So kind of getting the feeling that we're going to come back and more than likely we're going to find out he wanted to kill his wife. And so he did all of this to, he like killed her and suffocated her and then cut the wire to make it seem like the whole building, it was a gas leak or carbon monoxide, whatever. And that's what killed her, not him, basically to cover up his murder. That's what I was thinking. And it made a lot of sense. And honestly, it still makes a lot of sense, except for the fact that no, that's not the case. Even whenever Danny talked to the one girl and she was sitting there talking about, oh yeah, Nicholas was scared of Ed, I'm thinking to myself, okay, so this is going to be our red herring. We're going to think it's him. Even going into next episode, it seems like we're not ending it this episode, so maybe there's a chance the whole team's not going to be convinced. They're going to have this feeling of, did we just get a murderer off, whatever, and then we're going to find out later, no, it was not actually him. But then, yeah, he comes into Bull's office at the end of the episode and has this little talk with him, and I wasn't expecting it, I'll be honest. And I mean, I wouldn't say it's great. I wouldn't say this writing is phenomenal. Honestly, the rest of the episode outside of the case, I'll get to it, but the rest of it definitely brought this episode down totally. But as far as this setup for it, I got to give credit that it's not what I was thinking. It was set up to look one way, to look very predictable, in my opinion, at least, based on how they've been writing this season. And then in the end, they managed to actually give me a conclusion that is shocking, is surprising, and did make me go, holy crap, that's crazy. So yeah, I mean, I'm impressed with this. I do think, because I've seen this done before though, where it was in one of the Ace Attorney games, Phoenix Wright. There was a case where you represent somebody that you find out actually did it, but the scenario involving that to me was a little bit more interesting than this is. This is basically, this guy managed to convince Bull that he was a good guy, and that is where I do have a little bit of an issue, because I feel like Bull, he can read people really well. And I feel like there should be certain moments where he can see through what this guy is projecting. And yet he didn't, I mean, outside of whenever Danny got this information from the girl, he didn't have any clue. He didn't suspect this guy at all. The only reason that he suspected this guy is because the girl told Danny that Nicholas was scared of Ed. And he heard her voice and he knew that she was definitely scared of him. And so that's what made him question Ed. But there was nothing in Ed's performance, nothing in Ed's voice or facial expressions, nothing that made him suspect that was something up with him. And that, for me, is a little unrealistic. I feel like there would have been something, some weird thing, some weird vocal tick, some weird expression that he made at some point that would have made Bull go, that was odd. Just something, maybe not to necessarily suspect that he's a sociopath or a psychopath or anything like that, but maybe something that he just comments on earlier in the episode where he's like, that was a weird reaction. And then later on, whenever we find out the truth, it's like, oh, that's why. But there was none of that. There was no clue toward this until Danny talked to the girl. And I feel like that's where they didn't quite hit the mark here. They knocked out the ending. I think the ending was phenomenal. The way they set it up, the performances, all of it, that was really good. I think, though, the build up to it, it was a little, the pacing was a little off for me. So, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. Obviously, I don't know how this is all going to come to an end. Obviously, they can't really do much at this point. It's just down to the jury whether they convict him or not. And it feels like the jury is probably leaning toward not convicting him, or at least a hung jury. And I don't know what Bull's going to do now that he's been shared this information with privileged information overseeing it. So basically he can't share it to anybody else. I don't know. I'm curious to see how they're going to bring this story to an end. But everything outside of it, it's just boring. It's, first of all, it's way too much. We're trying to tackle all these different stories that have popped up throughout the season. We're trying to throw all of them in on top of this interesting case. And it's just weighing the episode down. You've got, Chunk going up against Rob again, and they're butting heads. And of course they are, because of their history together. You've got Danny talking about going with this guy to go climbing. I think they're climbing Kilimanjaro is what they said. So she's got that going on. Taylor finds out Mauricio has ADHD. Marissa is trying to sell TAC to this company so that they can basically become their main source of trial analysis. And she's competing with Bradley Lena over it. And it's just all way too much. There's way too much going on. Most of these stories are not that interesting. The rivalry between Chunk and Rob, we already saw this earlier this season before they started dating. And now all of a sudden it's like we're back to that again, where there's that rivalry, they're butting heads, but there's a little bit of playfulness to it. And it feels weird. It's like, are they going to put them back together? Because that would be dumb after you had this whole thing before. With Taylor, I mean, we had this whole story about her wanting to keep Mauricio, and it's like, cool, that's awesome. And now all of a sudden it's like, wait, no, not awesome, because find out he has ADHD, which is going to require a lot more parenting, but now she's having to take on more responsibility at TAC. Like, so we went through this a little bit during the whole hearing to find out who would get custody of Mauricio, and there was that problem of, is Taylor's job going to get in the way of her becoming a parent? And then ultimately it kind of worked out, and now all of a sudden they're throwing it back up as a problem again. Like, okay, well, we already dealt with this though. And then with Marissa, it's like, okay, so Bradley Lena just steps in and just swoops and takes this woman's business out of nowhere. And there's no reason for the woman to trust Bradley Lena at all. There's no reason to think that he's going to be a better businessman. Yeah, he's a good salesman, but what they do, what they're capable of doing at TAC compared to what Bradley Lena is capable of doing, there's no comparison. It doesn't matter that, oh, well, he's a killer and I need killers. That doesn't make any sense. Which one's going to do better business for you? Which one is going to bring in more business? The people who are doing their jobs correctly, especially in our day and age, whenever, reviews, social media, all of that stuff is taking over. If you have somebody who's not getting the job done, like Bradley Lena, there's a very good chance that that's going to pop up on social media. Whereas with TAC, clearly they get the job done. Now, of course, with them now representing this guy who murdered all these people, that may have some bearing on it going forward. But I don't know, the reasoning with all of that, I did like how Marissa kind of turned the tables on him at the end, but that was the most interesting story, and it still felt like it was taking up too much time. Like, you didn't need to bring Bradley Lena back. I know their story before, very similar to what happened with Diana, if I'm being honest. It felt like the whole Marissa and Bradley thing was kind of a big deal for 2 episodes, and then all of a sudden he was gone, and Marissa was just back at TAC. I get that you want to bring him back in some way. You want to show that he wasn't just a throwaway character, but bringing him back in this way just feels like it adds an extra level of tension that, again, weighs down the episode. This would have been a lot better if this were mentioned maybe a couple episodes ago, before TAC got their big check, before they got this money. This would have been an interesting story to see Marissa trying to, I guess, grow the business because they need that money. But now they've got a decent amount of money. Yes, they're still trying to grow and become an even bigger business and employ more people, but it still feels like if they don't get this, it's not like it's the end of the world. Yes, it would be a huge boon if they get it, but it's not like they're going to go under if they don't get it. And I feel like that's where this story would fit a bit better if it did not come after the last episode. And then with Danny, obviously it didn't take up too much time, but they did reference her going to climb with this Cameron guy, and I don't know, it just feels like almost like they're trying to push everybody to do their own things. And I don't know if that's going to be the message of this final episode, is everybody's going to go off and do their own stuff, and so TAC is not really going to be TAC anymore, and that's why it's coming to an end. I don't know what to expect. I feel like they're not just going to split up the team, though. That doesn't feel like something they would do. It doesn't feel like a writing decision that these guys would make based on what I've seen this entire season. Everything's got to be all hunky-dory, so I'm sure it's all going to work out in the end. Everybody's going to be happy. I don't know. I don't know how, but we'll see. So on to the final episode. I'll see you guys there. And finally, the series finale. Goodbye. And what do I got to say to the finale? Sorry. Sorry. Oh, put me to sleep with how boring and dull and absolutely ridiculous it all was. Yeah, I mean, it was stupid. It was absolute. Talk about taking an interesting idea with them representing this guy who is actually guilty for what they're representing him for, and nothing interesting with it. They try to find ways to get around it. They try to find ways to maybe get somebody in there to do something to get this guy behind bars because that's where he belongs. Blah 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 blah. End of story. Bull can't find a way to do it, and so he ends up just going in and tanking his career to get this guy a mistrial so he can be tried again, and maybe, just maybe, he'll get arrested next time. That's where this was all leading, right? This final season, the last season of Bull, that's where this was all leading, right? We were leading toward Bull tanking his career, leaving TAC to get this one guy that we didn't even know until the penultimate episode of the series. That's what this was all leading towards. Right? Don't look at me. I'm not in the mind of the writers. I don't know what the writers are thinking. I don't know what the AI program they used to write this season. I don't know what it was thinking. Because what is this? I mean, let's look at this from the mindset of this entire season, right? Starting from what happened at the beginning of the season with Asher being taken, Bull getting framed for bribing a juror, up to now. All of this is about as connected as a point all the way over in Minnesota and a point all the way down in Florida. I don't know why I chose Minnesota and Florida, by the way, just sort of the two states that popped in my head at the moment that were nice and far apart, because these 2 points do not connect. They're not even close to each other. They are so far on the opposite side of the spectrum from each other. I cannot explain what in the hell the writers were thinking with this. I mean, what's Bull going to do now? His whole life up to this point has been psychology and trial science and all of this. So what, he's just going to go hang out for a little while, maybe teach some psychology in the future? Possibly. We honestly didn't even get any sort of hint of what he was going to do. And then Taylor is going to move to Hawaii to go be with Eric after this whole emotional battle between her and Eric about who's going to keep Maurizio. We got to keep him here because, you know, Taylor loves New York. This is where life is, and Maurizio's been here for. Oh, but now he's got ADHD at the end of the season, so I guess Taylor, you're going to move to Hawaii now with him. Sure. Marissa has this huge battle at the end of last episode, fighting with Bradley Lena to win this one corporation, win their trust, win their business, and then she steals their client out from under them like a badass that she is. And then Bull tanks that offer by tanking his career and making him and TAC both look untrustworthy and losing that major corporation that they had. So why do we spend time on that? Danny, we spent this whole thing with this bartender, not half of an episode, about a quarter of an episode though. This whole thing with her almost getting shot, but she didn't, and then she meets this bartender, gonna go climbing, and that she's gonna go climbing with him still. That's all we get there. Cool. Chunk has this little tiff with this guy he used to know, and then finds out that maybe this guy likes him, and then they're together for a little bit, and then they seem to imply there's something deeper there, but then they have this really emotional episode, this emotional scene where Chunk realizes this is not the guy for him. They're way too different people. They could not actually work together. And then at the end of this episode, no, they're getting on the elevator. Hey, you want to go get a drink? Because maybe we can work things out. What is any of this? This is all so stupid. It's all so stupid. I don't know how you could have ended this show. I'm sure the writers had a difficult, or again, the AI program, if that's seemingly a possibility in my mind. There's a possibility that they were blindsided by the fact that Michael Weatherly was leaving the show. It caught them off guard. They weren't sure what they were going to do, and so they had to quickly come up with some sort of resolution. That's a possibility. However, this is what you came up with? Bull leaves TAC, he decides to destroy his career as a trial scientist by essentially the only way he can stop this one guy is by just going in, barging into the juror room and just announcing that his client is guilty. That's the only solution he could come up with. Nothing clever, nothing to really think outside the box. It's just, you know what? The show is about to end. This is the last episode. Let's have the main character tank his career to stop this one bad guy. And that's the last thing he's going to do. All the future bad guys, they don't really matter. We're just going to focus on stopping this one bad guy that we haven't seen before now. And I realize there's a little bit of a connection there with the sense that Bull missed the fact that this guy was actually guilty. So I get that he feels responsible for what happened. However, there's still not enough of a connection there for me to go, yeah, I could see this being the big moment where Bull decides my career is not worth stopping this guy. There's no connection there for that. Again, we hardly even know this guy. We got to know him in the last episode, and we didn't even get to really see his true self until the very end. So we've not even really seen him for who he is until this episode. And it's all rides, all Bull's career, everything he's done for the past 6 seasons, everything he could have done in the future, all of it ends here on this one random dude. What are they thinking? I truly don't understand. I don't understand how, again, any person could have written this and said, yeah, this makes sense. For a series finale, this makes sense. Let's have it end with the main character losing his job, losing the one thing he does really well, losing the ability to help anybody in the future doing this. Let's do that based on this one random bad guy that managed to trick him in one episode. Couldn't have any connection to his family. His father died. His brother, we haven't seen him since the one episode when he got introduced. No reference to that, really. All the money they got, again, kind of made the whole Marissa searching for a bigger client thing a little less. Again, she loses the client at the end of this episode. It's not even that big of a deal. Like, I'll go land another whale. It's fine. So why was it this big dramatic thing in the last episode? Why do we have to spend time on that instead of building up the guy that was supposedly the worst bad guy that you could think of that could possibly take down Bull's career? Like, there's so many issues in this. And it's frustrating that all of it was building to this anticlimactic, Bull loses his job, game over, end it. Like, and I know I said I expected them to end everything on kind of a happy-go-lucky note. Kind of did, in a way. Like, yes, there are bittersweet moments. The fact that Bull's not going to be able to do this anymore. Obviously, that's not, oh, everything's fine, hunky-dory. Like, I get that. However, it still ends on a feeling of everything's going to be fine, though. TAC's going to be okay without Bull. They've still got capable people that are able to do it without him. Yeah, Taylor's leaving, but she's happy with it. It's what's best for Maurizio, so that's okay. It's like this feeling of everything didn't end perfect. In fact, I would say everything ended probably about as bad as it could have ended. Like, they did not win this. They did not win in the end. But it still ended on everything's fine, guys. They didn't win, but it's okay. Everything's fine. And that, to me, just, it's a weird conundrum. You know, in a show that has had everything end so perfectly all season long, and on such a happy-go-lucky note, to end it where things do go wrong and nothing really works out, and yet it's still ending on a happy-go-lucky note, that to me doesn't feel right. It feels unsatisfying, honestly. Like, if it ended on a sour note and things were kind of sad, I would be like, okay, so they were going for more of a bitter, sweet kind of ending where things didn't work out and there's sadness there, but at the end of the day, they managed to get the guy, and that's what mattered. But no, it's like all of this stuff happened, the bad stuff happened, and nobody even really cares. Like, there's a little bit of a somber ending. Bull's not going to be here, but it's not like this is going to affect them poorly in any way. They're going to still move on without him. So it's like, it doesn't really matter. None of this, Matt Taylor leaving, I'm assuming they're just going to find other hackers to replace her. So it feels like, oh, her leaving, it's sad. You know, she's not going to be around, but we'll be fine without her. I don't know. Like, that's not satisfying for me. there's nothing satisfying about how this ended. It's like they didn't choose either one. They didn't choose to end things in a happy-go-lucky, or they didn't choose to end things perfectly. They didn't choose to end it on a everything works out note, but they still ended it with the feeling of everything works out. Like they couldn't pick. They didn't want everything to work out perfectly like it had all season, and yet they still wanted to try to make us feel like everything's fine, guys. We're all happy. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm very frustrated with this finale because it feels ridiculous. It feels stupid from the writers. And to be fair, looking back on season 6 as a whole, that's kind of the feeling I had all season. I feel like this season was set up to be not the last season at all. It didn't feel like it at the beginning. Obviously, Benny being off the show, it's nothing they could control, but there was definitely a detriment to the show because of it, because it felt like there was something missing this season, and that friendship between Bull and Benny was a key part of what I feel like I was missing. However, even outside of that, the stories were not interesting enough. The conflicts that the team faced were also not that interesting. I feel like the individual stories that everybody was going through this entire season, a lot of them amounted to almost nothing. You know, there was some weird moments that feel like they didn't really pay off in the end. The cases themselves, a couple of them got pretty interesting, but on the majority of it, it was not really that good overall. It just felt like there was a lack of quality with the writing this season that really shined through and brought this final season down. And it's a shame because looking back at Bull as a whole series, I really enjoyed the first few seasons. It was a little campy at times. It was a little weird at times, but I feel like I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the stories for what they were. It was interesting getting to see the psychology that goes into trials, that goes into jury picking and all of that stuff. I enjoyed how they handled a lot of that. So it's really sad that the final season was so bad. It was a show that I was excited to see more of. I wanted to see more of these characters, and honestly, the characters didn't even get me that interested in the final season. I kind of feel like some of them were not the best. Bull kind of had his moments where he was getting really annoying and really hypocritical and really stupid. And Marissa, leaving the firm at one point, I understood where she was coming from, but I still felt like they didn't really handle her character that great. Chunk, it felt like he did not have as much importance, even though he had a few different stories this season. It still felt like he didn't quite have that same level of relevance that I've come to expect from him. I don't know. All the characters felt a little off this season. Everything about the team felt a little off this season. It didn't feel like what I've come to expect from this show. So maybe it's just season 6 is where I finally got sick of the formula, because that can happen in formulaic shows like this. It can happen where I just get to a point where I've seen the formula so much that I get tired of it and I'm ready to move on. But personally, I feel like the quality of writing dropped off heavily this season. And yeah, it went out on a pretty bad whimper. So that's it for me, though. Done with Bull. That'll wrap things up. And again, sad to see a show that I enjoyed at the beginning end like that, with me being very frustrated and very annoyed by a lot of it. But with all that being said, that's it for me. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on the final 2 episodes, the final season, and the whole show in general? Let me know in the comment section below. Leave a like and subscribe for future CBS reviews. I will be jumping back into Star Wars shows next. So if you're interested in that, please check those out. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll talk to you guys whenever I see you. Peace out.